Super Meets are all about bringing on people who just make our lives easier as creatives. And it's a pleasure for me to bring back to our Super Meet tonight HP. And from HP, we have the product manager, one of the product managers for HP Z Workstations. A warm welcome for Rick Homan. Hello, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm the, there we go. I'm the technical consultant in charge of the media and entertainment industry, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. This is the first assistant editor on my 18-year-old son's favorite movie of all time, Deadpool. I would like to welcome to the stage now Mr. Matt Carson.
Thanks, Rick.
Hey, Matt. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Right.
How's everyone doing today? So I'm sure most of you have probably seen this before, but I figured I would go ahead and start out by showing you guys the opening title sequence. Perfect. So not too bad, right? All right. So as you guys saw, this was a 90-second full CG camera shot that weaves its way through a climactic battle of Deadpool kicking ass. Now, this was a great way for the filmmakers to convey both the tone and look of the film, and in doing it so, was able to grab the audience's attention right away. Now, when we decided that we were going to create something like this, we needed to figure out how we were going to do this. Would this be something where we could shoot practical shots or elements on set, or would this be a full CG sequence like what you saw? Now, with the budget of Deadpool being extremely small and the schedule being really tight, we luckily had Tim Miller, who's comfortable with the CG world, and it was decided that the full opening title sequence would be done at his studio, Blur. Now, with a task like this, we needed extremely fast machines, and that's where HP came in. So HP saved us by providing 5 HP Z840 workstations with the NVIDIA Quadro M6000 GPU, dual-core, 10-core Intel Xeon processors, 64 gigabytes of system memory, and the HP Z Turbo drives. Now, for those of you that don't know what any of this means, basically breaks down as being a smoking fast powerhouse monster of a machine. Everyone at Blur wanted to go ahead and get their hands on these, so luckily we were able to go ahead and use these. Now, having a powerful machine and a powerful GPU accelerates performance tremendously by offloading large portions of an application to the GPU, while the remainder of the code runs on the CPU. Now, with the power of GPU rendering combined with the speed and real-time interactivity of the HP workstations, Blur CG artists were able to go ahead and do simulations that they never thought they could do before. And it actually cut the simulation times by half. Now, as I mentioned, one of the biggest positives of this was the simulation times. Now, VFX simulations, or simming, is a process where physics are calculated for both complex structures and motions while generating a cache. Now, these simulations can run for days or even weeks sometimes, and they can only run on single machines because every frame of that simulation depends on the frame before it. So you can imagine it would be extremely stressful if you do a 2-week simulation, you make a change, and you have to start this process all over again. It's complete pain. But with these HPZ workstations, we were able to go ahead and get them out faster, which meant that we were able to render out faster iterations, and we were able to get notes from the executives faster. You can double the number of possible iterations, allowing us to get the best possible image. You know, as I mentioned, a 2-day simulation, which started on a Thursday, we could have done on Friday, giving the CG artists another round of notes so they could re-render out a new sequence for Monday to show the executives. Now, the first step to creating this was that Blur was tasked with creating a detailed previs in order to get the studio to sign off on the sequence. Now, previs essentially is a cartoon version of something that's either going to be created or shot. A lot of big VFX features go ahead and previs out sequences prior to shooting so they can literally know what shots they need to get, what camera angles, and it helps the sequence out a lot. Now, with HP, the previs was made better than ever. In the past, before these HP Z840 workstations, hardware limitations allowed only crude renderings during early production stages. artists, executives, and directors had to go ahead and make these huge decisions of whether something was going to create it or not off these crude renderings. But in this case, Blur's CG artists equipped with these HP Z840 machines got to work producing a previs that was a close approximation of what the final opening title sequence was, basically what you had just saw a few minutes ago. And this gave them their ability to execute this and made it much easier. Now here you'll notice the top was the previs, essentially what you would have seen, and the bottom was a crude rendering. You can see the difference of how crude the bottom is. I mean, the top looks more realistic, it's got the shading and everything, and it really helped Blur go ahead and sell this to Fox in order to go ahead and spend that money and get this sequence created. Now, how Blur did this was that they built CG assets like layouts from the ground up using Autodesk 3D Max. They then rendered them using the Chaos Group's GPU renderer V-Ray RT. Now that was what they used on the top sequence that you just saw. And that runs exclusively on the NVIDIA GPU, and then finally compositing in Nuke. And to top it all off, Blur was able to use the HP Dreamcolor Z27X Studio display, which has a 4K input. It also has the ability to go ahead and calibrate on itself. So rather than having to hire a third party to come in and calibrate, which costs thousands of dollars, they could just do that with the click of a button and not have to go ahead and spend any extra money. Now, we in editorial benefited from this greatly. Blur's VFX was able to go ahead and render out works in progress to us anytime notes were changed. We didn't have to wait long periods of times for these simulations to come out because of how fast they were. And this helped to my benefit for all the preview screenings. Now, when you're screening a big VFX movie, especially a VFX movie, if you have unrendered VFX shots, usually your scores go ahead and suffer. But in this case, we were able to get high-quality VFX renders. The audience was able to understand what they were looking at, and it helped in every single preview screening. One of the biggest issues that we had was that the MacBook Pro, or the trash can that we like to call them, we burnt through 14 graphics cards throughout the process of Deadpool, which cost us a lot of money. It was a pain. We had to go ahead and buy extra stations just so every time a Mac Pro would go ahead and burn out, we could swap it out and we wouldn't lose any time. So this was extremely frustrating. And since then, I've been working exclusively with Adobe Premiere, and mainly because of the fact that they allowed you to really go ahead and push the boundaries of post workflows. And with this, I'm finally going ahead and considering doing a mixed editorial platform for the next film, Terminator, because I need something that has robust processing power, professional graphics, and memory. And if we're going to go ahead and push those boundaries, this is where I need HP to come in. There we go.